Trump is in a good place from an approval rating standpoint. His numbers are better than 2017. He's about at the historic average in terms of decline. Good place, right? Yeah. But we have these storm clouds on the horizons, as we've detailed, perhaps most important of which are tariffs. Americans see tariffs as inflationary. They're worried about making ends meet. But there was a pause, and that pause, Trump implemented a pause that was very important for Americans, for the American household. Actually, his numbers improved because of that. But there's a worry about just generally making things go. Yep. As I said, making ends meet. Obviously, there's a complex view of tariffs. On the one hand, they have a lot of doubts about the short term. That has not changed. A big chunk of Americans believe that will be problematic, at least within the next year. But they see the long-term benefits. You have more than half of Americans believing that it'll bring back jobs, bring back manufacturing. So a complex story, but a lot of unease and trepidation.
How partisan are the results on that? Republicans are buying the message, Democrats are not, or is it more nuanced?
No, it's pretty partisan.
Yeah.
I mean, once again, the Republicans really give Trump resiliency right now. They're really helping to buoy his numbers at this point. That's not to say that independents, for instance, aren't more like Republicans than Democrats on this issue. But again, overall, there's this worry about inflation and tariffs triggering that.
Sure. The long term versus the short term is an interesting dichotomy. I've got to be honest, Cliff, I'm surprised that many people are thinking as deeply about this because there's been so little hard news. There's a lot of talk and a lot of noise, but we don't have a lot of deals with a lot of countries yet.
No, there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of chatter, obviously. But when you're talking about making ends meet, counting nickels and dimes, people are pretty sophisticated. Americans are pretty sophisticated. They just came off a really gnarly inflationary high.
Right. Yeah.
It's improved this year. That's part of why Trump's in a fairly good place. But they know how it is. And once again, it's embedded in their mind today that tariffs are equivalent to inflation.
There you have the most important issues facing Americans here. Extremism tops the economy.
Yeah,
how do we interpret that?
It trumps the economy today. I would put it in the context of the economy improving. So even though Americans are worried about tariffs, worried about future inflation, things have improved over the last year. You see that in the hard numbers. You see that in perceptions of the economy more generally. And when that happens, the economy has an issue. Weakens a bit, it tampers down, and political extremism really is a function of all the things that the Trump administration is doing that's causing friction, whether it be immigration on the one hand or tariffs themselves on the other.
Let's talk about the other big storm cloud, and it's named Jeffrey Epstein. I haven't really invested myself a lot in this story because it doesn't impact policy directly, but you can't escape it, and every time the president tries to change the subject, that becomes the story all over again. How dialed in are voters on a partisan level versus this being some sort of household issue we're all talking about here? How's the White House doing with this?
Yeah, it's still pretty distant for Americans in general, but it cuts to a core of a very existential issue for all Americans, whether they're red or blue or purple, and that's that the belief that the system is broken, that parties and politicians no longer care about the average person. That elites are colluding against the average American. And at that level, there is resonance. Now, they're not paying attention to all the details, but what they're seeing right now is this just more of the same? Is Donald Trump and his government, his administration, just telling us, more of the same like other administrations? Are they going to come clean or not? So it cuts this very important sort of, like I said, existential issue.
Look at this chart, though. I mean, Republicans off the chart thinking that the administration is handling this well. Democrats barely register. Is that where we are? When you take the sort of MAGA element out of this and look at this as Republicans and Democrats, that's the story.
Yeah, I wouldn't overread it because we live in highly, highly partisan times.
Yes, we do.
But the fact that we only have 35% of Republicans saying that he's handling it well, we would normally expect that to be 50, 60, 70%. No, this is a problem. That yes, it cuts to the issue of a broken system, that elites are colluding against the average person. Yes, that's true. But they are not happy with the Trump administration right now. To what extent that affects that weighs down negatively on approval ratings, we'll have to see. I think it will be more marginal in its effect rather than more central, but that's a wait and see sort of situation.
Shocked by how many people think that the government's hiding this information. You asked, how many Americans believe the government hiding information about Epstein's death and his clients? Definitely, probably true. 69% on the alleged client, 60% on the death of Epstein.
Yeah,
The videotape didn't help at all.
No, not at all. People don't believe anything coming from the government anymore, from elites anymore. Once again, there's a widespread belief, 60, 65, 70%, 75% of Americans, depending on who you ask the question, believe that the system is broken and elites are colluding against them.